Hey folks, I'm Bret Kinsella. This is Gain, the Generative AI News Rundown. And what are we talking about today? Well, we're talking about what everybody else is talking about, OpenAI and what I would characterize as the OpenAI meltdown. And today we have some special guests. So first, I have my colleague, Eric Schwartz. Hey, Eric, how are you?
Good. Excited to get into all the craziness.
Great. Eric is my head writer, is our head writer at voicebot.ai. I'm Bret Kinsella. I'm the founder of Synthedia and voicebot.ai. We cover the generative AI, conversational AI, and synthetic media markets, news, research, analysis, data, and trends. And we have some amazing guests with us today. We've got Bakz T Future. Hey, Bakz. Thanks for joining us.
Hey, thanks so much for having me, Bret.
All right. And Leslie Pound. Leslie, thanks for being here.
No problem.
And Bram Adams. How are you doing today, Bram?
Hey, Bret. I'm doing good. How you doing? Thanks for having me.
Oh, glad to have you all. Okay. So here's what we're going to do. I think what we're going to do is we're going to start with Bram and Leslie, who are both at the OpenAI Dev Day. And let's set the tone. What were things like in San Francisco 2 weeks ago?
Leslie, would you like to lead?
Sure. There was excitement. The crowd was energized. There was a great deal of charity. Nobody was complaining or looking at the bad guy. It felt a lot of camaraderie. I felt. I'm not sure of your impression, Bram.
Oh, I had a very similar impression. I think that the conference was designed very, very well. I've been to a lot of tech conferences because I used to do developer relations for a search software company. And a lot of tech conferences have this kind of like air about them of like competition or maybe a little bit too much focused on one thing. But OpenAI had like a really good balance. There was a lot of learning. There was a lot of meeting people. There was a lot of good vibes.
Yeah, exactly. Now, so Bram, you've been an OpenAI ambassador for some time as well. So I kind of feel like Dev Day was this culmination of like all this community stuff. And I know Bakz, you've been doing this as well too. It was like this culmination of like years of commitment to this platform.
Yeah, funnily enough, you and I met through Clubhouse back in like 2021 in the midst of the pandemic, and we were kind of talking about GPT-3 and kind of like what it might mean, and Codex was just coming out and everything like that. But the ambassadors, we are really, really close friends. We really do support each other, and we help. The community has changed so much too. Like when we were doing one-on-one office hours for the past 3 years, which we still do up to this day. It was a lot smaller. You know what I mean? You would see a lot of repeat faces saying, hey, I'm trying to build this with the API and failing, or, hey, I like got stuck on the playground, or, hey, yada, yada, can you help me with this? Whereas today it's just, so many people are in this space, either in the competitive landscape of like, oh, I prefer Anthropic or Claude or Meta or what have you. And then other people who are just like, is it going to replace Google day to day for me? Right? So I think that watching the community change over these past 3 years has really been a treat, but also kind of scary in its own right. I think it kind of got too big for its britches, which kind of led us to where we are today. In a lot of ways, it just grew too fast.
Oh, that's an interesting take. All right, Bakz, I believe you were in Japan during Dev Days. So you didn't get there, but you've been on this train for a long time. What's going on here?
Yeah, I definitely agree with this idea of culmination. It's funny, a week ago, there were no cracks in the OpenAI armor. They were well funded. The war chest was to the moon, apparently infinite. They had a lockdown team leadership. I heard rumors they were trying to poach Google Brain employees at 10 million a year in annual salary. So basically, I don't know, like a small military, like some kind of GDP kind of company. The word on the street, or the word they tell investors is, we want to capture the light cone of all productivity with AGI and artificial superintelligence. And, I don't want to get too philosophical here, but, it's almost like the whole industry saw God bleed, this impossible kind of force. God is now bleeding, and now very quickly people are ceasing to believe in him. This was the most lockdown team. This was the most lockdown leadership. People who are already multimillionaires, some of the best investors in the world, amazing team, amazing achievements, amazing research. It's just unbelievable. between Dev Day when they felt impossible or immortal to now where they are just so fragile. They are on absolute life support. Even if they recover from this, it's going to be a long uphill battle to look anything like where they were even a week ago. And I would just add, this whole thing is very sad and unfortunate. As an OpenAI user since 2020, I'm also just deeply hurt after seeing what's going on.
It's devastating in so many ways, and it actually just shows how fragile everything is in the modern era because things can happen so quickly. I have to have this sense that if we weren't in the social media age, this may have played out a little bit differently. But we are where we are, and also we can talk about sort of what we think went down. If people like, I think everybody who's watching right now probably knows, and people are going to watch this afterwards on YouTube probably know what happens. But sequence of events. Friday around midday West Coast time, the board fires Sam Altman, CEO of OpenAI. Now that was decided the night before. Mira Murati, as the CTO, was told she'll be the new interim CTO. I'm not sure she actually had a choice in that. I think they just basically told her. Shortly after he was fired, they informed Greg Brockman, who was the chairman of the board, but wasn't invited to that particular board meeting, that he's no longer chairman of the board. He was demoted. He immediately quit. Then they put out the blog post saying what had happened, and they said Altman wasn't consistently candid, and there were all these other rumors, and some stuff was leaked to Bloomberg about conflicts of interest and all these other things. Some AI researchers quit after Ilya Sutskever, who appeared to be the mastermind behind this and focused on AI safety, told everybody that there was no reversing this. It was the first time he said that to everybody. Over the weekend, the management team tried to bring it back. It seemed like the board was acting in bad faith and was just buying time until they could find somebody who would be like an acceptable CEO to the industry. Finally, they basically kicked everybody out and said, hey, we're not doing this. Sam's not here. Sam's not coming back. That's it. But that wasn't it. Satya Nadella basically said within an hour, Sam and Greg are coming to Microsoft to basically recreate OpenAI, and everybody who works at OpenAI has a job offer waiting for them. They can start with us tomorrow if they would like. We can, maybe a boss move, maybe there's some other things going on there. There's different interpretations there, I think. All right, so that's a pretty fun sequence of events just along those lines, but it didn't end there. The next morning, 505 employees, which grew to over 700 of 770, signed a letter saying, hey, unless you bring Sam and Greg back, we're quitting. When you lose 85% of your staff, your going concern viability, I think, comes into question. One of the signatories on there was Ilya Sutskever, the board member who informed Sam that he was fired. And supposedly the person behind all of this, because of the concern about runaway AI safety and Sam and Greg really driving to put commercial interests over safety. But then he put out a tweet saying he regretted what he had done. And it all starts unraveling. Eric and I pointed out to people that one of the board members, Adam D'Angelo, has a conflict of interest, a very clear one. Whether he was engineered this all or not is still remains to be seen. But we put a story out about that last night, and here we are. Lots of other stories about what happened over the weekend through the fracas, but surprisingly quiet since noon yesterday. That's all I have to say. And I believe that the OpenAI board is both lawyering up and also trying to figure out how not to lose the company. There's a few engineers who have stuck around making sure that the servers keep running, that their customers are somewhat serviced, but it looks like a train wreck. And even if the board just resigned and Sam and Greg and the whole team came back tomorrow, I think there was permanent damage here. And Leslie, you put out a post yesterday on LinkedIn. Tell people what you said.
I said for the last year, the AI community has gone to the public in Good Morning America, Al Jazeera, you name it. They've been on it telling us AI is coming and it's going to disrupt us. And some have even said it's going to impact humanity itself and gone to Congress. And Congress has responded and nations have responded to this. And then they pull this stunt. And it feels like hubris. It feels like they let the entire world down. They said one thing and did and acted like children almost in comparison to how a normal business would react, as opposed to a business that is already out there in terms of this dystopian future of what AI means. And I think they let us all down. It feels like they're airing dirty laundry in front of the world instead of handling it like grown-ups and business professionals.
Yeah, absolutely. And you guys can jump in anytime. I think, Bakz, you had a great tweet this morning, basically suggesting this was a dry run for when the AI robot overlords decide to take over, and how they might use this as a case study.
Yeah, I had an even wilder tweet before that. I said it's possible that artificial superintelligence has already cloned and replaced Ilya, and the easiest way to slow down AI safety and progress is to just go after the board, which is all humans, and then you can blame these human dynamics and human nature. Meanwhile, you've taken down your biggest safety threat. I would absolutely underscore what Leslie is saying. I feel foolish as somebody who's covered this space and advocated for OpenAI since 2020. I'm not an official community ambassador or anything like that, but just as like a super fan, I feel foolish. I feel like I put my trust in a bunch of teenagers. I can't believe what happened here. If I was on the board, or if I was Ilya or anyone involved, and I heard this was going to happen, the very basic thing I would do is sit everyone down and say, hey, let's relax here. Let's see what we can do. We'll talk about it. There's no reason to go nuclear and go after the dawn of Silicon Valley like Sam Altman. There's going to be some repercussions, right? It's not that easy, and there's a lot that we can fix here. We can work on this. We can work on it. We don't have to get to this nuclear option. So I feel like I put my faith in the wrong party, and overall I think this is a huge step backwards for the industry, for AI safety, for X risk, because the company that had their most ducks in a row and I's and T's dotted, and thought so much and put all these bricks down carefully, they could not even withstand a basic internal kind of attack from the board leadership level. At this point, I'm skeptical whether there is an institution or organization which could even handle the stakes of actual AI, actual superintelligence.
Are you permanently burned on OpenAI from this? Because you sound like it.
It's really hard to believe they can accomplish their mission when they cannot even handle their board. And the communication that I've seen from them, from their board up to this point, I even criticized their developer ambassador. I understand the position that Logan is in. It wouldn't have killed him to put out one tweet on the weekend just to assure the developer community that he is still advocating for the needs of developers, that they're still focused on service and quality and reliability. There's real businesses that depend on the OpenAI platform. And a lot of us have put our faith and optimism into this, but to see how they've handled this scenario at their worst, which was self-induced, right? This is not like a rogue AI or some nation state. I'm even skeptical at this point of the board. Like, say there were real world issues, right? Is this board as easy to manipulate and influence either from inside the company or outside if they had real issues that they were dealing with? So yeah, I've become more skeptical of this company and of human nature than I've ever been before.
I would just say I totally agree with Bakz, and what Bakz is pointing out is that there's so many conflicting not only stories but stakes under discussion. I mean, how much of this is personal? How much of this is a business thing? How much of this is a philosophical thing? How much of this is a larger story of other companies that aren't being discussed openly having some influence here? And also just the very strange, it's hard to imagine any other company of this level of influence, even a startup, where 4 people can overthrow the entire structure of the company in a night.
Yeah, amazing.
You know,
Hey, folks, this is Gain, the Generative AI News Rundown, just in case you joined a bit late. If you're on LinkedIn or YouTube, give us a like, please. If you're on YouTube, give us a subscribe as well. We definitely appreciate that. Let other people know and put some comments in. Make some comments. There's a few people who've been doing that. We're going to add those to the discussion. Ask questions if you want. You've got, Leslie's been building GPTs. Bram has a whole application he's built on this. I know Bakz has done that as well. So, feel free to jump in.
I'd
Bram,
like
I
to,
think you were going to talk.
yeah, just hop in. And firstly, I empathize very deeply with what you were saying, Bax and Eric, about like kind of how let down and a bit immature the kind of dialogue has been, and some of that dialogue has been kind of like propelled by just people getting all of a sudden tens of thousands of engagements on social media websites, where before, again, like I said, this community was so localized and just grew so massively overnight that I think that a lot of people didn't really know how to react to that scale of kind of importance in terms of just like regular people out on the street, like your grandmother being able to cite ChatGPT to you, for example. But I really want to underscore the point that I think that this is just more emblematic of what the Valley believes as a whole, and kind of like the Kool-Aid that the Valley drinks, about like whatever is the modern tech, these are our saviors. We've seen it. I mean, I'm pretty young, but like, but I remember it personally with like the Zuckerberg era, and then the era before that with like Apple and Microsoft and stuff like that. And it's saying like, this is the tech that's going to save us. And I think it's really important to separate or delineate at the very minimum the technology and the people behind it, right? Because as you said, real people are impacted by this. Real people cause this. Real technology does exist, and fake technology that's hyped by marketing also exists. So when you can kind of separate those things into buckets, I think it becomes clearer to really kind of extract a narrative that will allow you to like go to bed pretty easily and keep sane.
So where do we go from here? I mean, so let's do two scenarios. Let's say one scenario is tomorrow, the board resigns, OpenAI returns, full team. It's just like going to have a new board and everything. What do you do? We heard that a lot of companies had already been moving over to Azure. So more of them are going to be doing that because Microsoft has their own instance of GPT-4, GPT-4 Turbo, GPT-3.5, all of the models. They're also sort of building their own in the background, which is like a little reported story. But like, I think everybody's got to be looking at alternatives as well. So what do we do? You don't know.
I would just say that.
Wait a second. I wanted Bakz is like, he wants to say something.
Yeah, I'm
He's
on the
silent, though. I'm not used to you being like at a loss for words, Bakz.
I'm on the fence. Like at this point, I really question whether OpenAI can accomplish their mission. Right? I think I agree with Bram. It's important to separate the technology from the people dynamics, the everyday usage. Like we're talking about this. I have friends who use ChatGPT. They barely have heard about this, if at all, with some exceptions of friends I know who are in finance and stuff. But the whole premise of OpenAI, and they were the ones saying that they are capable of handling the stakes of superintelligence, the stakes of AGI, and those stakes include governments, that's the mass population, criminals, all these different scenarios. And meanwhile, this board situation has shown that they're so easily influenced. Like you mentioned, Ilya changed his position. It is reported that he changed his position simply because Greg Brockman's wife confronted him at the office about this, and he had officiated their wedding. And in my mind, I'm like, wow, that's all it takes.
I know.
Somebody's wife needs to tell you it like it is. And you just 2 days ago, you thought getting rid of Sam Altman was a necessary thing to save humanity, and then you speak to somebody else's wife and they tell you to your face, and then you walk back your position. This is unbelievable. It makes me question whether this board can ever handle, whether OpenAI employees can ever handle this issue of being influenced and all these other things. So if the board resigns, Sam Altman comes back, I think he may have to disclose the exact issue and provide evidence that the board had with him. I think that would be the starting point. They may need to risk that legal exposure by calling out maybe Adam D'Angelo had a conflict of interest, right? I think they may have to like put it out there, even though it makes them for libel or that kind of stuff. That'd be the starting point. And then they're going to say, oh, we're more united than ever. I saw the staff come together, all 700 out of 750, and we're more about our mission than ever before. And also we're stronger as a result, right? But I think the whole industry is going to themselves react and be like, we got to look into open source. We got to have multiple companies here. And also, there's this other issue now because I think they've set safety back so much that it's now going to be harder to do safety within these organizations because safety will become synonymous with traitor.
Right? Yeah, exactly. Leslie, how about you? You've been building GPTs. Are you just like stopping that and maybe you're going to build some applications or something?
Sure, I've been working with LangChain as well, so I've been in this space. I don't know what I'm going to do actually. But aren't we missing the bigger picture here? Nobody was using it because of their greater mission. Nobody was thinking we were waiting for AGI. We were enamored with what they already had. That was the popularity. That was the promise. So I don't even know what AGI that benefits humanity is. And the fact that they didn't achieve it or not going for it, it's okay with me. Just stick with what you've got. That's working really well is what I would like to see.
What do you think, Bram?
Yeah, I tend to agree more with Leslie. I think that philosophies can always be thrown out and never really proven, whereas like the null hypothesis is a really good draw to kind of say like, okay, how does this impact you day to day? And, I guess not to push back necessarily against what you were saying, Bakz, because I do agree with you again that this was a huge faux pas, and then everybody just kind of latched on, and the employees were tweeting hearts, and everybody was like, "This is dumb. This is objectively dumb." You know what I mean? Like from the outside as adults. But I think that it's important to kind of realize that life isn't perfect, right? Like that there isn't a perfect mission to get to a perfect point, and then when we get there, we're all going to wake up and singing, Kumbaya or whatever like that. You know what I mean? It's pretty magnificent that we all get up every day and our lights still turn on and that our water still works, given just municipal government, right? So I do think that this is a learning experience that probably every community would have to go through at some point. It just depends on the scale and the impact that it's going to be happening at. And I also don't think that, weirdly enough in that letter, the OpenAI employees sent in where they said that if OpenAI needs to dissolve, then it's for the good of the world, whatever. And I don't necessarily think that 4 people should decide that, but I do agree with the underlying sentiment of that, where sometimes people are more obsessed with keeping the thing that they want as opposed to the thing that's actually going to not, screw everybody else over and cause a big tragedy of the commons situation. So I would like to just say that again, like GPT has been extremely impactful in my life and in the null hypothesis for my own use cases. I use it as a reading assistant, right? So I've highlighted a bunch of stuff and then it goes through an API, ends up in this huge embeddings database that I like query every single day and have a great time with. I use it as a coder all the time using like Cursor and Copilot. And then I have like a bunch of little small chats here and there that are kind of just like one-off. But I do think that those technologies have already proven super useful, and I don't want those to go away. And if that's what has to go away in favor of AI safety or in favor of doomerism or EAC or whatever philosophy that anyone necessarily subscribes to, I think that we don't really win anything. I think that we all just kind of end up in the same place, but arguing louder.
Yeah. So I was doing an exchange this morning with Martin Casado, who's a partner at Andreessen Horowitz, and he'd made some comments. And I was like, what's really interesting is that, and I would say, like, if we've got the doomer and boomer camps, which the world is not binary, right? Everyone's on a spectrum here. I think everyone's for safety. Some people believe that there's different types of safety. One is like I think safety is a great thing, but I don't believe that super intelligence is actually achievable in the way that people think about AGI, but like safety's still fine. But okay, so we've got the doomers who like robot overlords are on the doorstep, and you've got the boomers who are like, it'll never happen, invest, go at any cost. And we were talking about it, and like I responded to him. I said, hey, listen, it was interesting that like a couple months ago, Jan LeCun was like almost the only one talking about, hey, maybe we're taking the cataclysmic doomerism a little too far. And then Andrew Ng joined on, and then a bunch of people signed a letter saying, hey, wait a second, we shouldn't rush in some of these regulatory aspects around safety and at the same time like eliminate all of open source, because it won't be viable based on the way you want to regulate it. But my point to him was like it was the boomer side, or the anti cataclysm side basically was still very passive. Wow, they came out in droves over the weekend, and particularly the last 2 days, saying, wait a second. And it goes back to what you said, Bakz. It's just like all of a sudden now safety is going to be something that if you bring up, there's going to be this suspicion around it. What do you think, Eric or Bakz?
I would just say one thing, and going back a little bit to what Leslie and Bram were saying, I absolutely agree. The sky has not fallen. The services today are incredible. It's funny, between all this, the story is no longer on GPTs. I think they're tremendous and incredibly powerful. So I really agree on that. But the truth is, the way, in my view, the AI community works, when the next model is released, the previous model becomes a lot less relevant. And what's going to happen is, yes, Bram and Leslie, you are using GPT-4 now. But if something like GPT-5 were released with far greater capabilities, today's whatever you're using will become irrelevant very quickly. And my issue now is, because the company that was spearheading safety, spearheading governance, spearheading managing these risks themselves could not keep it together, basically, in my view, between AGI and superintelligence, between this jumping off point, basically we are less set for the next version and all the capabilities it will have. We are less prepared. I think people are, maybe other companies will be less pragmatic and less thoughtful and put more into it. They may just release it. And so I think as a whole, this is a risk for humanity in a way. But going back to what you're saying, Bret, is like, it's just very disappointing.
Yeah, I mean, the boomers have been activated. That's really my point. It's just all of a sudden people who wouldn't say anything, because like all the headlines, we saw this for years, was like the world is coming to an end. And I'm sitting here looking, and it's like, yeah, there's safety issues. A lot of them are much more pragmatic. People using them for bioweapons and, and all these other like basically augmenting human nefariousness, as opposed to creating some sort of synthetic nefariousness that's going to kill all the humans. Which is more likely to occur? The former is going to occur. The latter, a lot of assumptions have to be true in order for it to occur.
If I was like just a genius upcoming AI researcher, like let's say I'm maybe brilliant and 17, and maybe within my head is the future architecture that basically gets us to artificial superintelligence, whatever, I would be looking at what happened at OpenAI, and I would be telling myself, like, I will build AGI completely alone without a team, and that too anonymously, because clearly you can't even trust your best friends. I'm going to, put it out here in video. Ilya, you betrayed your co-founders. By my understanding, they even recruited you, right? Yeah. And then you flipped, like 2 days later, after making such a big decision. I would be working alone if I was a genius AI researcher, and I would be working anonymously so that I can't be influenced by somebody's wife. I can't be influenced by social media. I can't be influenced by anybody. And by the way, this means there would be no oversight, and it would be far, far less safe, right? Because I think everybody in the industry and everybody who's watching, who's upcoming, is thinking OpenAI's path did not work. Clearly, this almost democratic, high governance, high safety approach, very transparent, is not the right approach. And so they're going to go into the shadows now, right? Yeah. And so whatever's next, we don't have control over that, because they've become essentially the example that this paradigm does not work this way.
I'm confused what we're talking about in terms of safety here. Do you mean privacy? Do you mean
No, this is
security?
the problem. This is the problem, is that
Oh,
safety means whatever the person speaking wants it to mean. And usually the people who get the headlines and all of the airtime are the ones who say robot overlords are about to kill us all. And it might not happen tomorrow, but we're going to have to do it. And one of the key points here along those lines is that they will never provide any evidence. And people like compare it to nuclear all the time and like nuclear warfare and things like that. It's like, we actually have evidence that like that's a bad thing, right? We know it's not just the physics. We've actually seen it in action, right? Okay. And when you basically say, hey, wait a second, I don't think this is really nuclear, or like, do we have any evidence of it? They're like, well, we can't wait for evidence because once it happens, there's no going back and we're doomed. And so basically it's a faith-based initiative, right? And so we have all these rationalists who are saying, hey, this is absolutely going to happen, but they basically are just it's now faith. Now I think this, like, and I'll let you jump in here, Eric, in just a second. The key thing here is that like that's what the dominant narrative is, and that is what's going to Congress and regulators and the EU and all these people who are saying, hey, we need to step in here to save humanity. Because you know what? If your purpose is to save humanity, that's a lot more interesting than just trying to stop a cyber attack or just trying to stop, potentially disinformation or things like that. That's for the little people. When we're going to have our symposiums, we're going to do regulation, we're going to save the world. And it really leads to a sense of misplaced prioritization and incentives it's basically a neglect of the things that are right in front of us that are going to be problems today. And by the way, even with those, we've always had problems with safety of every technology. Every technology kills people. It's true. And maybe we should just focus on the benefits and then the risks that are known risks right in front of us.
And
yeah,
go ahead, Eric. Sorry.
Oh no, I was just gonna say, to me, the nuclear analogy is more useful in thinking in terms of not that it's going to come to life and destroy humanity, but that people with malicious intent can use nuclear technology to, say, poison others with polonium. But then what's the unintended consequence? Everyone who brushed by that person also gets cancer. And with AI, it's not that AI is going to come to life and destroy the world. It's that people are already using it to make synthetic deepfakes to trick people out of their money and to do all kinds of things like that. And the issue might be more that somebody's trying to do something malicious, like steal money from a particular person, and look at that, and a bank's entire records are now open and on the internet.
All right, so let me ask everyone here a question. And before I do that, thank you everybody for joining us today. If you're on LinkedIn or YouTube, you're watching afterwards, give us a like. That'd be super. And the Generative AI News Rundown is generally on Thursdays. It won't be this Thursday, but that's Thanksgiving here in the US. But most Thursdays at 11 a.m. Eastern time, where we go through the top generative AI stories per week. And if you just want to read about all this stuff, I have a great timeline of everything that happened with OpenAI. I've got a breakdown of all the Adam D'Angelo stuff, because Eric and I have been reporting on this for a year now. Just go to the Synthedia newsletter. So it's bit.ly/Synthedia. And maybe our producer, Andrew, can put that in the chat for everybody to look at. All right. So my question is, everyone seems to think on this panel that generative AI is good. It has a lot of benefits, that the next model is going to be the thing we all flock to, maybe. So what is the model, if we're not using OpenAI, that wins here? What is the model that we're all going to go to? Are we going to go to an open source model like Llama 2, through Azure or AWS, or maybe directly on our own servers? Are people going to revert to Google because it seems like a safe place? Are they going to stick with the Azure OpenAI service? Are they going to Anthropic or something else? What do you think?
I still think the ChatGPT brand name and the distribution is very valuable.
Yes.
And the customer list, the community they have is very valuable. And so, it's still a really, really valuable asset. I think it would be hard to get anybody, the mainstream consumer base, to switch to another kind of chat thing, even if Anthropic did do it. So it remains unclear to me what's going to happen. If Microsoft absorbs it, then that's probably the most straightforward path. They keep Chat GPT, it just redirects to something by Microsoft. If OpenAI exists, it's going to be kind of a shell company unless other people see the value in chat and distribution and stay or flock there. There's many outcomes that could exist. All I'm saying is here, whether it's governance or existential risk, because of the board's actions, I have serious distrust whether they can handle it now or in the future.
What just like one word answer? If you're not using OpenAI, what are you using as an LLM? You personally?
I don't even know because I.
Fair enough. Okay, yeah, that's a legitimate response. What do you think, Bram?
Yeah, I think, maintaining the services that I've already built, especially as an API first user, is the thing that I would think about. I tend to lean towards hosted solutions because keeping my computer on 24/7 and cannibalizing my compute resources to keep servers up is a nightmare. I also kind of like to put things in boxes, but I think that it's going to be hard for a while to figure out what's the easiest path forward. I haven't really had good experiences with Azure in the past, even before they were GPT-ified. It's just kind of felt AWS-y and really hard to manage. And, again, when you're doing developer relations at that scale and you can't really talk to, people like Logan, for example, who I have like a direct line to, it's like hard to be able to impact the API in a significant way and kind of like get your voices heard. So I'll probably use OpenAI until the wheels fall off. And then after that happens, I'll readjust and see if I need to switch to an open source, because it would be easier just to put it on a render box and call it a day. I might be happier with smaller models. Who knows? But yeah.
What do you think looks attractive now? I mean, what would be tell me the 3 things you would look at today if you had to just reestablish service?
Yeah, I think obviously speed is really important, reliability, because prompt engineering is a
but what
stochastic.
models would you look at?
Oh, well, I mean, I guess like the Mistral one looked pretty cool because they were copying a lot of what was going on with OpenAI. And obviously, what Meta's doing, and everyone's got their hand in the pie. I haven't really tried any of the other models significantly enough to kind of be like, this is the one that I would go to next. But again, I would basically just A/B test.
By the way, I think this is what everybody is going through right now, and this is really bad for the industry, because in terms of the industry growth, I mean, it's great if you're like one of the other LLMs, potentially, because right now it's just so easy for everyone to start trying on OpenAI. It was easier to justify to their board or their manager that they're using OpenAI, all these other types of things. Just like it was so much easier because everyone's like, oh, well, they're sort of the first, the best, whatever. They're like approved. Everybody likes it. Now it's like, oh, geez, I don't know if I can use them. And so everybody right now is like, who's next? And I think Anthropic has sort of emerged as like the primary alternative over the last 4 months. But it doesn't mean they're going to win this either. I just think that like they've got the most inbound that's going to happen like immediately is a backdrop, and Meta is going to like look a lot more popular. I don't know. What do you think?
I'm just going to make a quick point, just
go ahead.
to underscore that, and for 3 seconds, is that I started programming when jQuery was popular, and I remember everybody saying if you don't use jQuery, you don't know what you're doing in JavaScript, and that there's no way that jQuery is ever going to fall, and people aren't going to be able to respond to it. And here we are, past jQuery, past Angular, past React, all the way into like the next Svelte territory now in the JavaScript web development world, and people are fine. So
yeah, exactly. What do you think, Leslie? You said you're working with LangChain, so maybe OpenGPT and some of the open source models. What's interesting to you?
Yeah, I'm just going to go under the hood and start to play in my own playground, build my own node server, and try to connect where I can to different LLMs and see how it plays out. Having a platform, to be honest, OpenAI seems like an alternative to the big players like Google and Amazon and Microsoft. And I don't really want to go back to that, because their customer support generally sucks and they don't spend a lot of time on documentation, which OpenAI didn't either, but there was a community you could talk to. So I'm going to miss that if that goes away.
Yeah, I think that's interesting. Go ahead.
I would so if OpenAI didn't exist today, I would just switch to Azure, which is, I think, the closest thing to what was previously there. But certainly, if somebody else comes along with something better, GPT-5 level, there's some reliability, they have some research, maybe there's a new paradigm, I would hop over there. In the meantime, I would keep my eyes focused on what Anthropic's up to and what Sam is working on next. And those would be the models that I would, assuming Sam and team. So if there's some core people coming from OpenAI who, I know and trust from,
yes,
like on the new thing, then I'm like, okay, this is the new place where this stuff is going to come out of. But to be honest, like at any point in AI, I think the rules can change. The game can change. I think every 6 months, the rules pretty much rewrite themselves, if not sooner. So even if this drama didn't happen, if I'm being honest, if some other company out of nowhere came next year with something better than GPT-4 and it was like super intelligent, OpenAI, it would exit my memory and I'd be on to the next thing.
And you'd be right on XAI.
Whatever.
Immediately, right?
Yeah. So it's always been up for grabs. But isn't
it about two things? I mean, I think it's about performance, like does it work, right? And how well does it work, and like price performance, all those things. And then it's ultimately about who you trust. And I think the issue is we had something that we trusted and we had the fallback option with Azure, because like who do we trust? And frankly, coming out of this, I think the only one that's really trustworthy is Satya Nadella.
I think the capabilities are really important, Brett. Like, if you told me today something new that's not GPT-4 or whatever, like I can type in how to make $7 million like in a week and it would tell me legally how to do that, I would be using that thing, right? And so like the capabilities matter. And this is why like I don't want to keep bringing us back to GPT-5 or something like that. But the new thing will have capabilities that we simply cannot even conceptualize today with something like GPT-4.
Yeah, but could you build your business around this, right? I mean, I think trust. So if you're an enterprise buyer, you're building a software company, right? And there are several of them have like backstops. They're like, you can connect to 2 or 3 others, but it actually works better if you just focus on one, you really tune it, right? And are you going to make the long-term bet on something just because it's better if you can get good enough, which this is really the whole thing, is most of the models now are actually better than you need for 90% of the use cases. Isn't like trust a big issue here? And hasn't we just evaporated most of the trust in the market?
Yes.
Well said. All right. I thought I would do something fun here because all of our doomerism here in terms of the end of the market. The one thing that's been great about this, I think, has been the memes. So I pulled up a few that I thought were really funny here. Matt Turk, by the way, he's like next level meme generator. If people don't know him, he's a VC. Picture here, reporting VCs mass in front of Sam Altman's house following rumors of a new venture. Yes, I thought that was great. And this came out right like the evening, I think, that he was fired. So that I thought was pretty fun. Let's see. I love this other one. So Matt, we'll come back to Matt. Last night, Sam got a text from Ilya asking to talk at noon Friday. Sam joined a Google Meet, and then blah, blah, blah. Greg got a text from Ilya asking for a quick call. Ilya sent a Google Meet, and you've got Sundar Pichai sort of smiling there because I think a lot of us knew this, but OpenAI doesn't use Microsoft tools. They don't use Teams. They use Slack in the background. There's a lot of other things. So I thought that was funny. And I love this one. This is one of the most popular ones. A lot of people have been out there. A guy on Twitter created this thing, and it's a very famous meme, and it's a GIF, and you guys should all look it up. But there's this one thing that's like nothing safer than AGI without compute, which is what the board basically delivered. I got a couple more here, but what do you guys think? Oh no, you guys can't. You guys you haven't seen this. Like
we saw the first one
for some reason. Oh, let me see. I'm not really sure why that's happening. I'll remove it and bring them back up for folks. Yeah, I don't know why that's not advancing. Okay, well, any comments on the meme culture? And I mean, you've obviously been involved in it, but things that have stood out to everybody here.
It's interesting how there is a faction within Silicon Valley that wants to create this narrative that it's about safety people and safety people are a virus. That's one interesting thing. It's been interesting how everything is so Sam centric. Like it's almost like Bart Simpson and the hysteria around him in the 90s when the Simpsons first released. Like there's something about Sam. He's like a Dawn. He's a kingpin, the superhuman Superman that is, bulletproof, right? And also very, very adorable. And like he's just got like all these. That's one thing that's interesting. And then, just to see people mobilize, to see the company mobilize and follow. It's just an epic story. It's an epic. It's got everything. Betrayal. Shout out to Hollis, early GPT-3 user. She was saying on Twitter, like, make sure everybody to read Shakespeare. Right, like there's a lot of lessons to glean from all of this.
There's actually a meme today where there's a deep fake of someone. There's someone who's doing like a Shakespeare monologue about basically killing everybody in front of him, and they did a deep fake of Sam's face over it. It was hilarious.
That too, Ilya.
Yeah, exactly. So here's a couple like. Let's see. There's the Sundar one. Nothing safer than AGI. People will recognize this meme probably. So look for that on Twitter. I actually just threw my own thing in here. So Kiefer deeply regrets this whole thing. And I'm just like, hallucinations aren't exclusive to LLMs. Over time, people are said to look more like their dogs. This may also be true with foundation models. I think Ilya may have been hallucinating.
My specific thing with that Ilya's thing is like, I think sometimes scientists underestimate how hard business, leadership, media is. Like
sometimes.
Like, what did the entire team think was going to happen once they got rid of Sam and demoted Greg? And as a scientist for Ilya, I can't imagine what it was like when he got that call from Satya, who his face must have been blue, yelling at Ilya. Like, yes. What did you do? And then he's like, oh my goodness, this business stuff is really hard, And, I think maybe there's a lesson here for scientists that like, you're able to do your best work and achieve all these great things because of all these other people that are good at what they do. And you actually depend on them and need them. They allow all of this to happen. If Sam was in this, somehow became the interim CEO, he would have handled this because he's Sam and he's skilled at what he does. But as a scientist, I think he quickly learned, oh my God, this stuff is really hard. I got people calling me. I got people's wives coming and yelling at me. This is not easy.
It's also, and related to the, everything, it all happened basically online. So all the reactions are also online and there's definitely some projection. I saw a great comparison of like it being almost a Scientology style battle of like philosophies masquerading or personalities masquerading as philosophies and people declaring how shocked they are that this group who's so rational could ever have any motivation besides, purely rational, high-minded thinking as opposed to, personalities and money, which is part of that whole how business works thing that the scientists may be surprised by.
Great point, Eric. I have a meme for that. People building AGI unable to predict consequences of their actions 3 days in advance. Yep. This would suggest AGI isn't here. Leslie, you made some comments earlier, along these lines as well, that that if we think about what really went on here, what really went down is hubris. It all goes back to hubris. And like Bakz, you're talking about this. A lot of these scientists, they're gods in their domain. And they're so focused on this. This is like the problem with experts. Well, one of the problems with experts is everyone thinks they're an expert now because they've never been an expert, so they don't know what it takes to become an expert. But that's one problem. The other problem is experts just are blinded to the things they don't know because particularly if you've conquered something that's very difficult. Everyone just assumes you're good at everything. But the EQ, the emotional stuff, the relational stuff, just the judgment and wisdom is completely different. In fact, we think about Roger Penrose. He says, like, consciousness is not a computational problem. So many things that people think are computational are not. I don't know, Leslie, you want to make a comment on hubris here?
Oh, well, Silicon Valley's known for that. I mean, this shows a bubble more than anything else, that they thought they were creating something for them and for the techies, and they could control it, and they couldn't. And the fact that they missed releases, oh, we're surprised that all the people like this after they kept seeing it over and over again and weren't prepared, shows there was a problem even before this. I'm stunned by the lack of maturity and hubris involved with everybody. I don't think it was just the board. I think the whole stack somehow got broken.
Absolutely. Does anybody think that this was precipitated by Sam's conflicts of interest, which was the first rumor that basically melted away because no one would basically put anything on the table to show evidence of it?
I think it was. I think it was a real thing, but also a fig leaf that was not nearly enough to cover all the other reasons that were probably behind the decisions made.
The reasons to fire Sam Altman have to be so strong. I don't know what it could be. I understand there are some allegations from his sister, which have come out. Possibly, there's no mention of the board or anything like that of that. These are allegations, but to go after Sam Altman, you need like real evidence and real proof. It needs to be big. And the fact that the next day they were asking to come back tells me, like, what did you expect would happen? Firing Sam Altman of all people. This is not your run of the mill CEO, right? That, is like got like a Harvard MBA and you can find them dime a dozen, right? Like, this is Sam Altman, former president of Y Combinator. What do you think is going to happen? And you better have your ducks in a row and have a plan for doing something like this, right? But nobody knows. I don't know. I still don't know what's making the board do this. And they've communicated very poorly and lost the respect of the employees and the public.
Yeah. Bram, what do you think? You think there's more? You think conflicts of interest are part of this, or is just safetyism or any other type of thing?
I don't really opine on this kind of thing because it's moving way too fast, and I don't think that anything I would say would make me look good in the future. So I actually am going to show tact and just not respond to it because that doesn't really. But I do want to point back to Leslie's point about hubris for a second, because I think that there's a really good book called The Real World of Technology by Ursula Franklin that was written in the 90s. And she talks about like the differences between holistic technologies and prescriptive technologies. Holistic technologies are the types of technologies that you see when you go to like a museum and you see a vase from like 2000 BC that somebody just spent 7 years making out of clay, and somehow it's stuck around for the past 3,000 years and ends up in the Louvre, versus a prescriptive technology, which is kind of like Nike, for example, right? Or Adidas, where they just kind of mass print shoes at certain sizes that people will buy. And I think it's really important to kind of like keep this in the back of our heads when we think about the value of the technologies to us and the people that make it, is kind of saying like, is this something that's holistically adding to our lived experiences as humans, or is this something that is now just trying to keep itself alive? Because there's a lot of technologies that fall into that second bucket where they just need to keep themselves around the same way that ideas want to keep themselves around or people want to keep themselves around. So I think it's really important to kind of, as I pointed out with the null hypothesis, this thing earlier, I do think that a lot of the technology that has proven immensely invaluable, and I don't want that to leave, but I'm not also against it not getting better if it needs to, if it turns into the psychodrama that we've been seeing unfold in front of us.
Yeah.
So one small thing, Bret, like I'm still hung up on the board's original letter where they said Sam was not consistently candid.
Yes.
I don't know what consistently candid means. And I don't know if this is like legal board level Jedi kind of language, but I don't know if Sam is particularly known to be consistently candid. I would not expect the CEO of OpenAI to be consistently candid, let alone something like sassy or in your face or tells it like it is. I expect a certain level of professionalism. And by the way, the board, it's weird because boards typically don't want the day-to-day consistently candid. They want the high level. They're thinking big picture, right? Like it's just, it's a really, really unusual thing to expect from a CEO and what it even means. But it's also just, it's vague. It's vague to the point that the moment they wrote consistently candid, I was like, they've lost the public support.
Yeah. What's even more interesting, I think, about that was the sentence after that, which basically thanked him for all his contributions. I'm like, what? What is going? It's like words matter, and people like maybe the incompetence we've seen from the board showed up first in the statement, right? And it's just like, that was emblematic of how things were going to go. But this idea that they thanked them, and so my whole point is I broke down, okay, so here are the like 6 different reasons that this could have, 6 different things that could have played out. And one of them was like malfeasance. Like that's always, potential, right? I was like, there's no way if there was malfeasance, they would have said that. There's no way if there was something that's like significant inappropriate behavior, they would have said that. Because basically you're saying, hey, you did this horrible thing, but thanks for helping us get this far. There's no way that happens. And so the consistently candid thing, I think it could relate to some conflicts of interest. That would be like the ideal. Say, hey, you know what, you did that, but it told me that there's gray area here. And they realized that very quickly. And then the backlash when they came hard, the management team came hard after them, they didn't have a good ground to stand on. So then they're just like, safety, 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 save me with the idea of safety. Safety people, come in, save me. And they weren't there. It's just, there was nobody there to help them.
If I was an Instagram model, I would understand if they want me to be consistently candid. But CEO, I don't quite feel the same way.
All right. Hey, this has been great. Leslie, where can people find you? Where do you want them to see all your cool stuff?
I'm kind of between things right now. You can contact me on Twitter, Leslie Pound on Twitter, or on LinkedIn, Leslie D Pound.
Perfect. Bram.
Yeah, you can find me on bramadams.dev. It's my name there, spelled BRAM Adams.dev. I write a newsletter every Sunday that talks about books and concepts, and then I also make a lot of creative technology and generally just do whatever I want. So come by and see if you like seeing a person go crazy in his own domain.
Perfect. Bakz.
Follow me on X at Bakz T Future. Thank you.
Good. I'm glad you said X and not Twitter. We're making that transition. We are
Working on it.
Eric.
Yeah, I'm also on X at Eric A. Schwartz, but LinkedIn is definitely more likely where you'll find me. Although, actually, now it occurs to me, not one person mentioned Grok.
Well, I did have this thing that was super popular that I said, Elon Musk has this thing that he says is that it turns out in our current era that the most humorous outcome is the most likely. And so I said, oh, well, what would be the most humorous outcome? Actually, it would be that Elon Musk comes in to save OpenAI, that everybody quits. He's got a team called XAI that actually swoops in, takes over the servers, reboots GPT-4, and very famously, Elon Musk left the board when it became, although there's different stories about this now, but when it became, went to for profit, he said he put a lot of money into it. That's also in dispute, but he's founded as a nonprofit. If he came in and then wound up controlling the assets of OpenAI, that would be the most hilarious outcome. All right, I'm Bret Kinsella. This is GAIN, the Generative AI News Rundown. Find me on LinkedIn at Bret Kinsella, on X at Bret Kinsella. Would love to have you follow me or connect with me. If you do connect with me on LinkedIn, just let me know you watch GAIN or something like that, so I know you're one of the people, a member of the tribe. And read about all this stuff on Synthedia. bit.ly/Synthedia. So thanks a lot, everybody. I appreciate you being here today. I hope you learned a little bit. I definitely did. It's always great when you get good people in the room. Thanks so much, Bakz, Bram, Leslie, and Eric for joining me today. All right, everybody. Bye-bye.